who I will try to do justice with this introduction. I don't know if it will be enough. You've seen him on Hockey Night in Canada. You see him on Sportsnet with the Jeff Marek Show. He is a hockey podcasting god. I say that term with all endearing and total respect, because he is the voice that a lot of hockey fans go to when they need to know what's going on and they want an opinion and they want to know what's going on with this beautiful game of ours. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Marek joins us now. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us, sir.
First of all, I want to say it's a real honor and a real pleasure to be on this program. First of all, the lighting in here is terrible. We just had a blackout going back to our hydro just came back on. Let me see if I can do something about the lighting here. That's not too. First of all, thank you for that introduction. And Nick, I really got to give you credit. You read that exactly as I wrote it. That was really like that. You just the God part. You really sold it, and then you paused and you let the gravity of it sink in. Bud, like that was, they say sometimes you paint a Picasso and sometimes you paint a barn. That, sir, was a Picasso. So, Nick, thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you. I learned from the best.
Gumps, how are you? Ripper, what's going on, boys?
How you doing, boss?
I'm good, man.
So how'd it go with the rink? This guy's hockey through and through, man. I was talking to him earlier. He's like,
yeah,
rink with my kid is a boy, girl playing.
Boy. Yeah, I got two boys to play. We have a 5-year-old daughter. She's starting to get into it a little bit, but no, both the boys play AAA hockey. So the.
So yeah, I heard you say he had dry land.
Yeah,
when I was a kid, if the coach said we're having dry land in May before the next season starts, I'm telling my mom I want to go to a different team. I think
I'm gonna go to a different sport. Never mind. Yeah, so they skated for an hour and a half and then did an hour of dry land. It's intense. It's weird. And he's 10. Like I remember when I played hockey when I was 10. You guys remember? Like you just went and you with your buddies and you had some Skittles and you played, and then you went home and had a root beer and a burger on the way home, and that was it. Now it's like you got to get to the rink early and do your activation and get your hands going and get the bands and everything. And afterwards, it's like, okay, we got to get the Theragun out on your quads and you got to work out I'm like, they're 10, man. Like, let them be 10 years old. But it's, I don't know. Hockey's a weird place right now.
It's different.
Boys, for kids, it is. I don't want to be the old guy that says, "Oh, it's better in my." I don't want to ever come off as that guy. But I think Rupper, that's the right way. It's different.
Yeah, it is
different.
Yeah. Nick said a lot of people hear your voice, obviously, for a lot of different hockey stories and news. I'm one as well. I listen to you and Elliot on 32 Thoughts all the time. So any of our listeners here, if you haven't listened to 32 Thoughts pod, it's incredible. I don't know. That's like when I'm in the car late night and that's what's on, and keeping up on things. I want to ask you, so the last couple you guys have done with Elliot's been in the car, and so you guys got to adapt. Is there, do you guys ever get to the point though where Elliot, is there ever a time of the season where because it's generally you actually do 32 different topics, right? Or that's more the written. On the written,
that's a loose. On the written, Elliot nails 32. Although, there have been some, you guys have read his piece before. There are some I'm just like, that's a thought, really? You're really
so
I know we all sort of fake it till we make it here in this industry. I get it, and there's some stretching that has to go on. But
does he ever say Jeff, I got nothing, dude. I got 3. You got the other 29, or that just doesn't happen.
You know what? There's a great old saying in our industry, guys, and that is, if you're not sure about something, say it loud. And I'll back that up with, if you're not sure about something, repeat yourself 4 or 5 different times, put a different cadence on it, maybe put the accent on a different syllable, and it'll sound different when really you're essentially just kind of repeating the same thing. Although, you know what, on the blog that Elliot does, there's 32 legitimate or close to it. 30, I call it 32-ish thoughts, Mike. It's not exactly 32, but he's there's always a
great name for it. Yeah.
There's some good stuff in there that Elliot's able to uncover. But what I always, say to Elliot is, as far as the podcast goes, that's just sort of wherever the news takes us that day. And it doesn't have to necessarily be 32. It can be, one topic, but you have a lot of different perspectives on it. Like I call it pretentiously, because I'm a big fan of Akira Kurosawa movies, the Rashomon effect. Like you take you have one issue or one event, and you have sort of a 360 view on it. So you try to figure out like, okay, what this means from that perspective. Gilligan's Island did this, so don't think that I'm just like I'm a high culture guy. Gilligan's Island did a takeoff on Rashomon by Kurosawa once upon a time on the island. So maybe Gilligan's Island effect, where you have like one event but there's a number of perspectives taken on, when really just talking about the one thing, but from a number of different points of view. I hope I made sense on that one.
No,
you did. What was that last Ridley Scott movie that just came out that was Matt Damon and Ben Affleck? They did that as well. They had one story and they had like 3 or 4 different points of view of it. It was incredibly well done and shot. And that's what I think of.
That's great. Let me bring this back to your podcast, because the last podcast I listened, I think it was the last one that you guys recorded with John Michael Lyles. You guys were talking about officiating, and you were talking about hitting, and you were talking about getting referees' perspectives on various things. Like we have a real luxury, and you guys have a real luxury working with Rupper. Played in the NHL, so you get to have like I never played in the NHL. Like the closest I got was 16 years old. I didn't get drafted in junior, and I quit. Like way to go, Marek. Thumbs up, way to go, guy. Like that's as close as I got to. Oh, don't worry, kid, you're gonna get drafted. I didn't get drafted. I said, okay, well, screw this. But like he played in the NHL, so like we have a real luxury of being able to access the minds of people that played and see things that you don't necessarily think about, things that you don't get a chance to think about. And I think one of the untapped resources is officials for watching how the game is played. Like there's a lot of like wonderful players that you can talk to, and like I've cherished so many. Rupper's been on my show like a ton of times, and there's always a few things in the little flavor pucks that he'll drop in. You're like, oh, okay, you know what? Okay, I never thought about it that way before. I'm gonna have to actually think about what I'm talking about now. Thanks, Rupper. I can't just float through this. Can't just float through this interview. But officials give you another perspective to all of it, and that's the wonderful thing I think about hockey too. Specifically, how gray it is. Like my worst, like I don't want. Like I know there's a hue and cry about, oh, just call the rule book. I don't want them to call the rule. As stupid as it is, I don't want you to. I like hockey where we're not sure. It's not black and white. There's that gray area where kind of where life is and where life exists. Like I've always maintained that when it comes to sports, and specifically hockey to this, guys, because it's beautiful and it's violent, and you can argue that it's beautifully violent. And I think part of the attraction for hockey is, it's a constant tug in between what your head knows and your heart feels. And that plays itself out in violence. And that plays itself out in fights. Like as a grown male, as a grown man, in my head, I can't rationalize a fight in hockey, but my heart can. my heart can all day long. And that's sport. Right? That's that tug between the two. And for me, that's what makes this sport so beautiful. And I think, hearing an official's point of view, because you guys are talking about the Shen high stick / low stick call, like I think that's a beautiful conversation. I think it's a beautiful conversation. We're all sort of teaching each other how to walk each other home, and we're arguing about a call or talking about a call, but really we're just talking to one another and just using that as a backdrop. And having the officials come into it gives you a whole new perspective. So it's a long-winded, pretentious way of saying that it's nice to have that flavor in the conversation.
I love when we talk, because you and I can really get off track and talk our way down a bunch of different alleys, right? Like I'm sitting here and I was thinking about having you on tonight. I'm like, I'd love someday like to get together and have a few pops and just let the stories roll and just give opinion. Sure, you're like that deep thinker that makes me think when I hear you say things, right? So I want to say this. I know
I got you fooled, man. I got you fooled.
You're fooling them all. You're doing a good job of fooling them all.
Thanks,
but
Bob.
When we're talking about refereeing, and I had a conversation, I won't say who, because but I was speaking to an NHL ref.
Okay.
And I said, why don't we adopt assigning referees to a series? And I know other people have brought this up.
Yep.
And I'm like, why is that not a thing? Because as a player, I would like that, because it's like a strike zone. Not every strike zone is the same thing. But if he's calling the outside corner, then I'm going to adjust. But if every game in the playoffs is a different referee with different views and different ways of calling it, some might let the boys play, some might try to keep things calm from the get-go. Now it's a mixed bag, and I think it brings up a lot of stuff. And his response was, I don't think the GMs want it. They don't want to get a bad crew in the playoffs.
Yep.
And they don't want to be stuck with a bad crew. or sorry, what they deem a bad crew. Like these guys are narrowed down. Like these guys are doing a great job to the best of their ability. So I want to say there's a bad crew because you gotta qualify to be a playoff referee, and then as the series go on, it gets harder and harder.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you think about that, Jeff. I think it just makes so much sense. Like why don't we do this?
I think this is exactly what we just talked about with pretentious Rashomon / Gilligan's Island effect here, which is from a player's point of view. I understand exactly where you're coming from. Like from a player's point of view, that's what I want to. I want the same officials, and I want to know what their standard is for how close can I get to the hands with my stick.
Because by game 2, so there's no surprises anymore.
And you know what's really important too? Brian Burke pointed this out to me once, and I've never forgot it. And now I look for it every single game. So Brian, before there was a Department of Player Safety, there was someone that just handled discipline. And Brian Burke was Colin Campbell was of course one that they handled it for a long time. But Burke made the point that he would always, and they would always tell the officials, and to this day, this sort of sets the standard. I've talked to Stephen Walcom about this a couple of different times. He always said the most important call in any hockey game is the first call, because the first call should set the standard for the players so they understand, and the fans as well, to set expectations, but more so for the players so they understand this is how the game is going to be called. Like that first call can never just be one of those like, really, you're calling, because that ruins it for everybody, because then you've set that standard. But that first call really needs to be a call that has a certain, gravity attached. Like that really needs to be a call, like a big one where you look at it and you go, okay, that's how they're calling it. That's where the bar is. So I like that. And I know that if you have that consistency of officiating crew throughout a series, I know that players will love it. I don't think GMs will. And I don't think that fans will. And I don't think the NHL will, because the last thing you want to do is, if you're the NHL, it's present the product where the officials, whether it's true or not, and generally it's not, where the fans have a belief that the officials have now become somehow emotionally invested in the contest. So as much as from the player's point of view, just give me the same crew. Tell me what's a penalty. I can adapt. I'm a pro athlete here. I know how to do all that.
That's going to start the conspiracy theorists to say they didn't want this team to win.
And it doesn't take much to start them.
And you know what? Here, I'll give you. This is the part of the interview where I bring in props. Hang on one second.
Yes.
So, can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we got you.
You guys are menace.
So, behind me, I have like these old copies, and I got an entire box. Hang on. All right, see this? So this is an entire box of old hockey news. Like I've got boxes of these, like all
very sane thing to do. Yeah,
this is from July 1971. So I'm doing show and tell here on the podcast.
Whoa, you got
going above and beyond.
When did hockey news start?
In 1970. These go back into the 60s. So I'll pull these out every now and then and just flip through them. Okay, and dollars to donuts every few issues. What's this one from? Oh, we got 1981. We got Rick Middleton and Ray Bourque.
Okay, there you go.
We got Dipty and Ray Bourque. We got we got McCourt Flino, New Blood and Buffalo. Here we go. Dollars to donuts every few issues. You know what the conversation is?
Refereeing.
Yeah.
Ref stink.
You're right, Gump.
Still is. Never changes, dude. And I'll be the one beating the drum too. I love it.
This has been a conversation since water froze and we dropped the little black rubber thing on it and said, go for it. One of my favorite stories. I love this one. Let me see if I can get another. Do I have a puck here? Oh, I don't have a puck, but here's welcome to my life. I don't have a puck, but I got my Mac 30 that I use for television. So you got a puck. Okay, Nikki's got a puck. Like he's a hockey guy. I got freaking makeup. So let's just pretend this is a puck. So there used to be an official. This is in the era of Bill Chadwick, who was the big whistle. Bill Chadwick was the official that came up with like the hand signals, right? Hooking, slashing, all that. He was the guy. Bill Chadwick, legend,
innovator.
So absolutely great idea. Came up with some wonderful ideas. Later became a commentator with the New York Rangers. This would have been in the I guess early to mid 70s. Anyhow, but one of his contemporaries was a guy by the name of Mickey Irons. Okay. And Mickey had this saying before every single game. This is in the single referee system. So before every single game, he would call the two linesmen to center ice and he would hold up the puck and he would say, gentlemen, one thing we all need to remember here. This is one of the unique things about this sport is this is a hockey puck. And one thing we have to remember, the minute I drop this, the three of us become the only sane people in this building. All I need to do is drop this, and then everybody will lose their mind. Like, these conversations have been going on forever. It's never gonna, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I don't want it black and white. I don't want call the rule book. I don't want, I hate the puck over the glass because it is so black and white. I just hate that part of the game. I just can't. I love where hockey is gray and Nick's got a thought on one thing and he thinks I'm an idiot and I think Gumps is so off on something and Rupper's shaking his head at all of it. I love all of it. And that's the beauty of this flow sport. Is it's not stops and starts. It's a flow. And in that flow, where there's a confined space and boards and violence, you're going to get weird things that happen. And everybody's got a different point of view on it. And for that, I love it. And that's why whenever anyone wants to, call in, make the rule book and more automatic penalty, no, I really, that to me, that removes part of the charm of the sport.
Yeah. Jeff, let me ask you this, because it's kind of an expansion on that thought. Our boss, Pat McAfee, he always says that he thinks hockey is the best officiated sport of the, we'll call them the major four of the NFL, NBA, MLB. And he talks about the relationship the referees have with the players and kind of what you were alluding to there. Like, the referee will let you know, hey boys, this is where the line is tonight. And other nights it may be different, but tonight this is where it is. He'll let you know either by telling them or by showing them with the calls and stuff. Do you agree with that sentiment? Because I think a lot of hockey fans say, oh, this league is so poorly officiated and so terribly officiated. It's just garbage. It's trash. When you look at a perspective of Pat, who is a hockey fan, but not the biggest diehard hockey fan, he has a completely different point of view where it's like, hey, this sport's run pretty good from the player's point of view and from the fans' point of view because hey, they get to have a relationship with the refs.
That's probably a Mike Rupp lead singer question, the relationship with the officials. I like it. I love watching officials talk to players. I love, seeing Kucherov, say to Wes McCauley, how'd you get in here? And Wes says, because I was a shit hockey player. Like, by the way, Wes McCauley, if you want to throw random trivia out at people, the 1990 draft was a great one, right? Who's the only player remaining in the NHL from the 1990 draft? I don't want to waste your time. It's Wes McCauley. He was in the 1990 draft, drafted by the Detroit Red Wings. He's still on the ice in the NHL. You can fool all your friends at parties and thank your buddy Jeffy for that one. But one of there's the thing about how well officiated this is. I'll tell you. I don't know if you guys have thought about this, but I'm so surprised they get so much right. I'm so surprised, especially when it comes to offsides. Yeah. When I remember, so here's, I've always wanted to do this. So I have pitched this TV show endlessly, and it's never gone anywhere. I always get, oh, Jeff, that's a great idea. Okay, yeah, all right, dude. Yeah. Go do it on your little podcast or something, Marek. Yeah, think of another idea, buddy. What else you got for us, pal? Okay, so here's the idea that I've always wanted to do for a show, right? So I want to take all the great, the big hockey plays of all time. Okay, like the biggest, Nystrom scores 1980, the Islanders win the Stanley Cup. Henderson scores, Team Canada, wins in 1970. Think of all the big goals in the history of even Brett Hull foot in the crease, all the big goals in the history of the game, and go back and check the zone entries to see how many of them would actually
you're an evil man.
Would actually be called back. Does Nystrom scores and they're going crazy. Hold on a second. They're going upstairs.
You know what? This one will drive Nick crazy. And I don't know if I told you this. So Bobby Holik, the one day we were sitting there pregame meal and we're talking about some great moments. And I had a couple things came up, and Bobby Holik is probably the most tell you how it is person I ever met in my life.
I know Bobby. I know Bobby well, so I know exactly what you mean.
I love Bobby.
Yep.
But Bobby will tell me, Rupper, your nose is so crooked, you should get it fixed. What the fuck? Like, he's just like ruthless. Like, just tells you everything.
I respect that honesty.
I love everything about him. But he rubs some people the wrong way because he says what he thinks. Yeah. And so we're sitting there the one day, and he goes to me, a lot of this hockey history stuff's garbage, right? You know that, right? I go, what do you mean? Kind of like what you're saying too. He goes, well, I mean, Messier's guarantee, if you go back and talk to some people, wasn't as I guarantee we win tonight, and the, I don't remember what he was saying with that. It was a little more like they kind of ran and then it happened and then whatever. I'm like, don't tell me that. Don't tell me. I don't want that. It was Messier. That's the great leader. Like,
I want to live with my lies.
Yes, I want to live with it. Then he brings up to me, he goes,
yeah.
Oh yeah. Remember Mario's 5 goals, 5 ways? He's like,
don't you dare.
The empty net goal shouldn't have counted. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, go check the tape. Pull it up on YouTube right now. I pulled it up on YouTube.
Offside?
No, what was the light used to be? The green light is the end of the game? Or is it red all the time? Like whatever. The light went off in the
before it went in?
It was at the top of the circles. It was at the top of the circles behind the net. The lights go on. And I'm like, so there's never 5 goals, 5 ways? So this is to your point. Let's not do this. Like if
I'm gonna wreck it some more.
Your show will ruin hockey.
I'm gonna wreck your hockey life some more, Rupper. Watch this. So in the 204-205 lockout, we were all very bored. And I was doing a daily hockey show with former Leafs assistant general manager Bill Waters. And then essentially I had the rest of the day to do whatever, twiddle my thumbs. There's no hockey games on. Like I would go watch tons of junior games, go watch the Mississauga Ice Dogs a ton, but like I really didn't have much to do. And I was single. So here's what I did with my buddy Paul Patsku from the Society for International Hockey Research. And this is where a lot of all this Gordie Howe stuff comes from. Because one day we decided, what if we went through all Detroit Red Wings, Houston Aeros, Whalers game sheets and found out exactly how many Gordie Howe hat tricks Gordie Howe had?
Not many.
2.
Wow.
2.
Brennan Shanahan.
You hate to hear something like that.
Shanahan's right up there. I know that Stan Mikita's up there. I know that Jerome McGinley is up there. I think Rick Tocchet is certainly up there. The first was a guy by the name of Harry Cameron, who was a defenseman for Toronto back in 1917. So if anything, it should be the Harry Cameron hat trick because he was the first to do it. But listen, Gordie and like Gordie Howe Inc. Like one thing. Howe is an amazing player. Wonderful. I don't want to take anything away from Gordie Howe. Like, this was the era where guys didn't have like 35 on their card every year. Like, okay, so he only had 2 Gordie Howe hat tricks. He did only have recorded 22 pro fights as well. So it wasn't like Gordie had a ton. We all remember the famous ones like beating up Lou Fontinato, and Lou's nose was, he could like smoke.
You do a couple of those, then next thing you know, maybe there's not so many participants.
Well, that's just it, right? And Lou's like right to the end, like Lou could smoke a cigarette in the shower and like not put it out because like Lou's nose was like, like he got it pretty good in that fight, right? And we all the Bobby Hull picture of Hull and that with the fight. But anyway, like Gordie didn't do it very often. You're right. Like you send a message. But he only had 2. And one of the things that another show that I've always wanted to do is, and you would hate this, Rupper, and maybe a lot of hockey fans would too, like Hockey Mythbusters. Like
that would be very interesting.
All the myths that we've lived with and we've just always believed, and we've always just said it because we've always just believed that it's true. Somehow we've got from calling zone entries historically using video review to ruining everybody's history. Like I get it. Like we all have lies that we live with and myths that we retell about this great game, and it's a lot of fun. Like I was always there was one incident in the 1965 Memorial Cup that has always existed in like myth and legend, and it's Bob Falkenberg and Derek Sanderson. And this is the Memorial Cup, and it's a particularly violent series. There's some clips of this. I've put some stuff up on it before. I've got the whole somehow I got something part of like a tape trading ring forever. Being single for a long time will do that for you folks. Marriage ruined all that for me. But anyway, I finally got hold of the video, and it's like it's the most brutal thing in the world. Like it's the most brutal incident on the ice I've ever seen. Like the worst sucker punch of all time. Sanderson drops Falkenberg. Falkenberg's out, and he keeps staying on him. And cops hit the ice. And the really interesting, faintly in the background, and I've always heard about this, but I've never actually heard it in a game. So before O Canada, the national anthem of Canada was God Save the Queen. O Canada is an anthem past 1967. God Save the Queen was the national anthem of this country. And the law was, no matter where you were, if you heard that played, stop what you were doing and stand at attention.
Really?
And I believe this started in the Maritime provinces, East Atlantic Canada, that the only way to break up brawls was to play God Save the Queen over the loudspeakers in the rink, because it was a law. You had to stop fighting. They played that. And guys, I'll tell you, it's the funniest thing. Bob McGill told me that, his dad was there at the Edmonton Gardens to watch this fight, but he couldn't remember anything about playing God Save the Queen. And faintly in the background, as cops are hitting the ice and like with billy clubs and grabbing kids and like trying to drag them off the ice, you hear faintly in the background God Save the Queen being played as they're trying to get everybody off of the ice. So Sanderson gets pulled off the ice. Okay. Sanderson gets pulled off the ice, and he gets dragged into a room and beaten up until he's unconscious by members of the Edmonton Oil Kings alumni. One of those people is Glenn Sather, who knocked him out. Now, they both find themselves 2 years later in the Boston Bruins organization, playing in Tulsa. So who does the manager room together?
Oh,
Derek Sanderson and Glenn Sather. I remember I asked Sanderson once, did he ever say anything? Did you ever tell? He said, we never talked about it once.
It's just what's done is done.
The hockey, like the myths of everything and the reality. Like I love all, and now we can find a lot of archival things that have been hiding. I mean, the history of the sport is so rich and so great, and so like I always describe it as beautifully violent. Like in that violence, there is a real beauty that can come out. I remember. Maybe another time. Remind me to tell you a story about dark suit fights. You ever hear that one?
You can't just tease us like that.
I just realized when I was starting into it, I'm like, do I really want to do it? Yeah, okay, I'll do it. So
dark suit fight.
You're saying dark suit?
Dark suit fight. This is one that I think you guys will really like. So Brad May told me this story. Somebody's at Mayday.
Okay.
Did I tell you my Mayday story?
No, go for it.
No, after this.
Oh, which Mayday story was? I know a ton of Mayday story. Which one was yours? Give me a hint.
He said, "Hey kid, do you fight?" That one or no?
Yes, you told me that one. Yes, you did.
Guys, I'll tell you.
And I think I told you that right after that one. I told you the Louis DeBrusque story.
Yeah.
Mayday had the little note from Bill LaForge. Hey, my coach says I have to fight you when you come out to the penalty box.
Yeah, you did say that.
Teacher's note. So this would have been when Brad was playing with the Maple Leafs and they played the Montreal Canadiens, and Brad's like, I gotta show something. I gotta do something here. And Berkey's like, no, like you're not gonna fight. Like you don't fight Larocque. Like no. Mayday, like you don't have to prove anything. Like you're a 15-year vet, and of course Mayday fights him, and it's a decent fight. Like it's like George grabs you quick and shakes you and gets you off balance and like the spin cycle and starts swinging, and Berkey comes up after the fight and says to Mayday, he's like, Brad, that fight was amazing. Oh, that's a dark suit fight. That's a dark suit fight. And Mayday's like, what the fuck? Dark suit fight. What's a dark suit fight? He goes, it's a fight that's so good. You hope you're wearing a dark suit to hide the boner. That's how good that fight is.
What the fuck?
Oh, it's so good. Oh, the dark
Oh,
suit.
This sport is beautiful, people.
I love it.
It's a
yeah, we don't get too
sport.
many of those dark suit fights anymore. I'd like to see a few
Nah,
more
you-
of those.
you
But see,
don't,
here's the thing I would love for you to talk about too, and
Sure.
is like, just even right now, I was doing some of my rounds today with different hits and whatever. This Jacob Trouba stuff in the playoffs right now. There's this. We know about the Crosby situation. A lot of people didn't like that. I would have been totally fine. Thought he probably should have gotten a game. I don't think it was intentional. I had an issue with people saying he targeted. No, he did not. He went in there and tried, and he went stick on puck, and his arm got rotated. And what I've seen from him, just a little side story, I think he needs to change the way he hits. He takes his non-stick hand and he puts it right here on his chest and his armpit, and he braces himself to hit with his shoulder, but he flares his elbow out. It's a bad optic. It's a bad optic, and that's how he got Sid. That's how even in last night's game with Max Domi it wasn't his elbow, but he's almost like when you hit, that elbow should be, it's not about, like, he's tucking his hand and thinking I'm keeping my elbow, but it's like chicken winging himself. You know what I mean?
It looks like a chicken wing.
Like
but
he
yeah,
almost
is
needs
tucking
to,
it.
he needs to put that hand down almost in his side and like hit like that, right? So this is something that's really bad optics, and I think it's going to get him one of these times in a bad way if he doesn't correct it. But anyways, so we're seeing this. There's that happen earlier in the year. He had a couple incidents. He had a big hit. Wasn't the one on McKinnon? He had to fight Landeskog, and then he had
Chicago.
Jujar Kara.
That one was scary because the optics of that was terrible and what the results were for Jujar. And here we are last night. Here's the problem that I have is when people just chalk it up and say there should be zero tolerance. There should be zero headshots. We, in theory, we'd all love that. I would love if we had no head injuries any longer. But the only way to do that, and then people get so mad when you say this, is the only way to do that is to take a significant amount of hitting out of the sport. And I know the sport is evolving and we're getting new fans, and it's great and it should always evolve. But this is still, in the nature of it, a violent sport. And so unless you're going to drastically change it, and if you do, then you do, but don't say, oh, the good old days. Like you cannot, like that hit last night. Everybody wants Jacob Trouba to get suspended. They can't believe that was a very legal hit. He had Domi fall. And the problem is people want to look at a whole like this. Oh, the same thing with Kadri and Bennington. Oh, well, this guy's done all these things. No. You look at this incident, and both incidents were bad results, but fine plays, right? Like they're hockey plays. So my thing is to you is like, how do we cut down these headshots without dramatically changing the game?
This is going to sound really distasteful for a lot of people. But if you want contact in hockey, and again, that might be a complete separate discussion. Maybe we don't want contact in hockey. I still think non-contact hockey leads to a lot of concussions. You see the women's game where there are tons of concussions, but it's non-contact.
Yeah,
that's because there's a lot of skating, like in various non-contact hockey, male or female. There's a lot of skating with the head down, and incidental contact can lead to concussion. Anyway. If you still want to keep physicality in the sport, as a fan, this is going to sound very distasteful, and I understand that. You have to be comfortable with concussions. That is going to happen. That is, the players are going to get not just hit in the head, because it's funny. I've got a doctor friend of mine, and she used to work with Dr. Charles Tater. Actually, Charles used to let her cut skulls for surgery. I remember she cut their first skull, and she's like, Dr. Tater let me cut my first skull today for brain surgery. It was so cool. I'm like, you're a freak out. Anyway, so she always says, like, you hockey guys are I'll just be blunt. You hockey guys are stupid. I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you think you just get concussions from getting hit in the head. You guys are so fascinated with touch the head, shoulder to head, anything around the head. She says, I treat more patients that get concussions from getting hit in the stomach than I do from the head. It just has to be the whiplash. Says you can get hit in the back, you can get hit in the stomach, you can get hit in the side, and you can still get a concussion. Now, the headshot thing is the one that's very obvious. And I understand the sensitivities around it. And I understand how distasteful it was for me to just say, if you like hockey, you have to get comfortable with the idea of concussions. But the reality is, again, when we talked about myth and we talked about reality, if you tell me to park my, I raised this example when the game changed after the 0405 lockout and crackdown on obstruction, and you weren't allowed to rip guys' heads off anymore, and there was not like the game profoundly changed, and the game got faster, and it went from a contact sport to a collision sport. Like it's billiard balls now.
Yeah.
No, there's no rubber guy out on the boards.
No.
You're slamming, okay, and your heads are going to get hit if that's what you want at this speed. Okay. And speed is a huge component of this one. And bodies are all moving, and not everybody is 6'1", right? There's, the 5'9" player, and there's a 6'5" player, and the 6'6" player, and the 5'10" player. Like, everybody's head is in a different position, and the bodies are moving faster than ever. And they're not just going table hockey style in straight lines, they're going all over the ice. I think it is folly to think that heads will not get hit. That's why I say you have to be comfortable with the idea that concussions are going to happen. The example that I always gave is, if you told me that starting tomorrow, I could only park my car while I'm driving 55 miles an hour, I'd say, okay, that's going to be hard. Eventually,
Okay.
I might get there, but along the way, I'm going to smash a lot of cars.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we got to. We got to this area where guys are skating 30 miles an hour, and you can't slow them down. There's no more hook on the hip. There's no more soft side defenseman slowing anyone up. And that's why it's billiard balls right now, smashing each other. And I think it's naive of us to think that we can make this thing safe. Now, we always try to make it as safe as possible, but I don't. This idea that they're trying to get this out of the. You're not going to get this out of the game. My friend Allie she says it best. She says, because she always talks about, you guys with your fights and hits and that. She said, your problem isn't fights and hits to the head. Your problem is hockey.
Yeah.
It's the game itself. And I always go back at her, and I ask her, and you can ask any doctor this, if you guys handed the doctor, any doctor, the NHL rule book and said, rewrite this so you're happy, how different would the game look?
Oh,
yeah.
No.
If we still want, and again,
it
would be different. Certainly, I think you'd lose a lot of people. But as long as we want physicality in the game, as long as we want body contact in the game, we got to always remember it's a dangerous game. And I think Jacob Trouba is reminding us that it is a dangerous game. The thing that makes Trouba stand out right now more than anything, guys, is so few guys do this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And these guys, Berkey always calls them the unicorns. These guys don't exist. Yeah. Everybody wants them, but who plays like this anymore? It's still allowed. It's still legal. And there's only, guys, I think there's only one way we can change it. I've thought about this a lot. I know you guys probably have as well. And there's only one way that I think we can ever change this and get headshots out of the game once and for all. Here's my theory. You're already smiling. You don't think I'm going to be serious here. You think it's a big joke. Okay. The only way we can get headshots out of the game is if the penalty for headshots is the offending player pays the escrow of the player who just got hit.
Oh.
Mike Rupp as the player with that calm headshots down. Would you see players pulling up if they know that, I got to pay that guy's escrow?
They wouldn't be hitting. So
they wouldn't be hitting.
Be a way of kind of getting rid of it. So yeah, there wouldn't be any hitting. It's it's kind of like this vicious cycle though, because I think in life, we want everything we want. And I get health is important. And you need to make adjustments, but everybody wants more goals in hockey, less obstruction. What things have never changed in hockey? Hockey's rare because it's got boundaries. It's got boards and a glass, right? So if you're taking away any vehicle to potentially slow down skating, to allow me to get into a battle for a puck without hitting, those have all been taken away. I can't even lift sticks a lot of times now, right? So any kind of wily veteran type move or play to try to get a puck back, which is the name of the game, I can't do because we're not allowed to do it anymore. All this has done is made it faster. We've gotten more goals. I love the skill, love where the game's at. But with that being said, the game has gotten too. We've never changed the size of the rink. We shouldn't. I'm not advocating for that. We've not. Certain things were set up from the beginning of time because the hockey was played at a particular speed. It's like NASCAR tracks. If you use the same, I don't know nothing about nothing in NASCAR, but like let's just say the short track, right? If you came out with a car that can go 500 miles an hour and do it on a short track, you'd say, no, you can't do that. This isn't big enough. Like it's too much speed. We have to have some sort of control. We're getting to a point now where it's so fast that it scares the shit out of me when Connor goes to the net hard. It really does. It scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here and I've watched this kid since he was 15 or 16 in Erie drive the net fearlessly 100 miles an hour. And I'm like, oh my God. So that's why I almost would like to have a little bit of some sort of obstruction. We have to find a way to slow it down, because otherwise, if you have these high speeds with hits and immovable walls, we're gonna have head traumas. We're just simply gonna have it.
You know what? One of the things that never really gets discussed at all when it comes to head trauma, head shots, people getting hit in the head, sometimes deliberate, true. Most times accidental, I would still maintain. And I still firmly believe that hockey players don't go out there to try to maim each other. Do they try to hurt each other? Yes. Do they want to maim each other? No. One of the things, just the nature of hockey itself, like there is, like, just think about this for a second. Like, just, it's always good to sort of step back and try to really think about like what this game is. We allow contact with large men skating fast in a sport where the object of play is at your feet and your gaze automatically turns downward. I've talked to so many people. I mean, just funny. I was just talking to Adam Oates about this like 3 weeks ago. We were talking, I can't remember what hit it was. And the point that he was trying to make to me was that hit happened because the player had only one hand on his stick. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, you try to keep a player's vision engaged in the play at all times. So what happened was, in this play, he only had one hand on his stick, which is okay in this situation. But when he puts his other hand on the stick, even for a brief second, he disengages from the play and his head looks down. And he looks, even this for that split second, and bam, that's the moment where it happens. And we have the object of play at our feet. This is why I think lacrosse is a great cross-training sport. Both my kids played lacrosse early because I wanted them to learn how to move with the ball and, make passes and plays with their heads up. Yeah. And always, and to this day, I'm always like, guys, up. Because you see it, right? You have this, and now you guys talked about this in the last podcast again with like the stop signs on the backs of the jerseys. Okay, this is going to protect me. I always want, my kids and my older kids now starting to get into body contact. You go one more year and there's body contact. The way that Craig Simpson told me he trained his kid Dylan was, every time you're on the ice, every moment, expect you're going to get hits.
Yeah. If
you don't get hit, bonus. But if you do get hit, you're prepared. And don't expect like that stop sign to save you. Don't expect referees to bail you out. Take that into your own consideration here. But I always think about this. Like, we have a collision sport where the object of play is on the ground, where your natural gaze goes down. It is like everything about this sport is built around the potential for the head getting hit. I don't know a way out of it. I really don't. Like, we can make I'm actually, I would disagree with her. I think we should make the rinks a little bit wider, like not the IIHF 200 by 100, but maybe like the Finnish size 200 by 92, a little more room to the outside. I don't know. Do you still need a GPS when you step over the blue line to find the net at that point? Maybe. I remember Igor Larionov used to talk about this. I remember I asked Larionov once, I'm like, would you like the 200 by 85 or the big ice? And I'm sure he would have said I thought he was going to say the 200 by 100 international ice surface. And he said, no, I like the smaller, because the minute I step over the blue line, all of a sudden I'm in position to score. I'm in position to do something. I was like, I did not expect that. I did not that from Igor Larionov, but there it was. But like the whole sport is set up for people to get really hurt. And then, you mentioned the boards. I've thought about board. I'm a really boring person. I thought a lot about boards in my life, and what the board does psychologically to you. Like as a player, do you not? Okay, I'm gonna ask you that. Mike Rupp, be 100% honest. When you go from reality, okay, so out of the dressing room, walking down the hall, okay, all of it. The minute you step on the ice and that door closes behind you, do you not feel as if like this is a new area that's carved out in the world? Reality is all out here. That's where all the fans are and everything. But there's like this Thunderdome. This is different. And the rules out there, they don't apply here.
Right.
This is our own separate reality. And there's a physical barrier. Basketball, you go out of bounds, you go into the fans. Football, you could run out of bounds. Baseball, the foul line, you can run into the stands. Like hockey has a confined barrier. And I always wonder what that does psychologically to hockey players. Reality is out there. Like how many times have you said, I don't know why I did that? I can't tell you. And I honestly, I think it's because it's a totally different reality that hockey players go through while they are playing. And I think it's the presence of the boards that does it psychologically. Here's my reality. That's yours.
Yeah.
Your rules don't apply here. We have our own set of rules for this thing.
That's really interesting, Jeff, and not to cut Mike off because he's really the only one that can speak on this, but I just got to say, like, you think about that a lot of times when guys do something and you're on national TV. There's 20 cameras pointed at you. We can see the replay. We see what you did. You weren't getting away with anything, but they're not thinking of that in a moment. No. And Rupper, I'll let you answer that because it is mind-boggling at times.
Yeah, I mean, it's a place where, and even just a different angle on it too. I've, my late years of playing, my last couple seasons, I tried to work with like some of the younger guys, and I had a great conversation. I had a great conversation a month or two ago with Jordan Greenway, and it's a little bit different than what you're saying, but it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. I considered the NHL, and I learned it in my career, that to me it was like sort of like WWE in regards to I can create a persona. Look at Sean Avery. This guy created a persona, and he had a career that he was a very good player, drove everybody batty. I mean, at the end of the day, Sean Avery, that tough? No, he's not. But he built himself certain thing, and he was willing to do certain things that made him a lot of money. So I guess another point of it is like we talk about Tom Wilson and what he is. Yep. And so you have young players now where you can be like, maybe it's not even in your nature. You're a nice guy. You're a laid back dude. Fighting does not come by nature with me. So I wasn't brought up just beating the wheels off people on the playground. Like, you know what I mean? Like you get to the point where you're like,
are you sure?
You get to the point where you're like, this isn't real life. You know what I mean? And when I realized it wasn't real life, I could take on this persona. And I used to always have it where I have my pregame routine when I go on the ice and when the game's about to start, and I would have this routine I go through on the bench with water, smelling salt, have this thing, and I put my head down, and it was almost like when I picked my head up and looked, I was like a different person. Yep. Right. And
I totally get it. I totally understand that.
And from then on, what happened, it's not Mike Rupp, it's I guess Mike Rupp, the hockey player. And so there's this money out there where, like a guy like Jordan Greenway, I'm just use him as an example. You don't need to fight. That's the whole thing. You don't have to fight anymore. The rules, you do not have to fight. Nobody has ever told me to fight. You have to have a persona in the league. And when you get on that ice, and if you're big, you better use it, because that'll be the difference. If you really want to maximize what your compensation is, it's a difference between you making $4 million and $7.5 million a year, right? Like just to be one of them. And I started doing that later on in my career. I was not the toughest guy, but when I got on the ice, next thing you know, I'm looking around. We're playing in Vancouver. I'm looking around. There's a scrum. I grab Daniel and Henrik, and starts shaking a bull, getting him rabbit punches in the mouth. And I'm looking around, and obviously Kevin was tough.
Yeah.
He would step in there and fight, and he's certainly capable of stepping in there and beating me up. But on the you look across the league, and there's not many guys anymore. So that started making value for me. Then when I become a free agent, they're like, this guy can get double-digit goals, and there's a lot of people that don't really look at them when they're playing against them. So now your value goes up. You have more team interested, all those things. So I get what you're saying. Like, it's a different world inside there. It's a world that you can create this persona, make a lot more money. You can do all these different things because it's not reality. It's fantasy. It's fantasy living.
You guys watched the it was game 3 of the Battle of Alberta where Mike Smith got pulled out with the Conky doctor wanted to go check him out baseline and all that.
Yeah.
You tell me that Mike Smith didn't feel like a pro wrestler when he's coming back onto the ice.
Oh,
you tell me when you saw that walk and you heard that ovation.
Yeah.
You don't think that Mike Smith thinks he's Undertaker?
Yeah.
Like at that moment, like
if the in-house entertainment was on, they do the Stone Cold glass shatter.
Oh yeah, that would have been it, dude.
No.
There's so my favorite because you're right, like you make your own persona while you're out there. Some guys embrace it, some guys aren't into it, and that's cool. Everybody's different. Eddie Shore. Okay, Eddie Shore, like the Boston Bruins have this like long lineage of like having just elite level, defensemen. They got another one in Charlie McAvoy because of course they do. And then before him, there was Chara and it was Ray Bourque and Brad Park and Bobby Orr. Go all the way back to Eddie Shore. And Eddie Shore was like, he was nasty. Like we've all heard the stories about, when he ran Springfield in the American Hockey League, what he used to do to players, like nasty dude as an owner, but as a player, like, he did a lot of really like awful things to players. Like he was one of the first like real villains in the game. And the thing about Eddie Shore is, and I've always wished a player would do this. Oh my God. I could see like Brad Marchand doing this tomorrow. Eddie Shore used to do every now because every rink he would go to Chicago, hated him, go to Detroit, hated him, Toronto, hated him, Montreal, hated everybody. It was like everybody against Eddie Shore. What Eddie Shore would do in warm-up every now and then, he would wear a black cape. He would wear a black cape in warm-up because he was embracing that he was the bad guy of the NHL. Rupper,
unreal.
If you were sitting next to a guy in the room, you're about to go out, and he said, "Oh, hold on a second here. Can you
put my cape on?
Can you tie this cape for me up in the back?" What? Like what? That's Eddie Shore, man.
That's incredible.
He used to wear a black cape in warm-up not all the time, but every now and then he'd break.
I think you see subtle nods to that. Maybe not as drastic as putting on a cape, but I think of of Tom Wilson standing up in the penalty box and gesturing.
Yeah.
I think of the flexing. I think of Ryan Reeves the other night talking about it's my job to go out there and run guys. So I'm going to go out there and run some guys. I think you see subtleties and little hints of that, but you're right. Like there's no real overarching villain anymore, but there are guys who can kind of play the role from time to time.
Everybody wants to be the cool guy.
Yeah,
that's the problem. Like everybody coming into the NHL, like the kids now are being all encouraged to show their personality, and that's great, and they have it. But a lot of it, like there's a lot of sort of personality overlap with a lot of these guys. I'm waiting for the person that really embraces being the villain. Yeah. Sports is always best when it's good guys versus bad guys.
True.
It's like okay, and again, like you come down to it comes down to it's one fan base versus the other fan base, and one man's ceiling is another man's floor. It's always better when it's heroes and villains, and it's so seldom that anybody really leans into being the villain. Oh no, I want to get cheered. It's a rare person, and this is what makes someone like Brad Marchand so special. Elite level skill, like next to sublime skill, but like he loves being booed, man.
Yeah,
like it's just like
the fucking best. I love it.
Just drink it in and just rain it down, like cleanse my soul with these deep downs. It's beautiful.
Tim, Matthew Tkachuk's another one.
Beautiful. That was another beautiful player.
So if we went across and started naming some of these, Tom Wilson, they all can play. right? So that's the underlying, like, they all can play, but when
That's the kicker.
how rare are they? This is my point. If Tom Wilson was a pending UFA right now, there is a team out there that they'd offer him north of 9. They'd give him $9 million. Like, I honestly think there'd be a team. He is like a culture changing guy. If Brad Marchand was UFA, Brad Marchand would be making Connor type money. Like, I because of those things. That's my point. You got to be able to play. That's huge. But if you can play and you're just a little squirrely, right? Once in a while,
just remind them.
Once in a while, just have a bad day. Go to the rink and say, if anybody, remember in Step Brothers when he's in the back seat and he goes, if he gets in my face, I'll drop that motherfucker. You know what I'm talking about? That? So you got to come to the rink once in a while and say, if anybody gets in my face tonight, I'm going to drop them. And just go bang once. Don't do it for 80 games. Guess what?
No.
You're going to be making millions. Like, guys, to be a heel, guys love it. It gets your team. Like, I when you play with guys who went out there, like I play with Matt Cook. He was like a big time villain, right? So when Cookie would go out there first shift, and we might be playing in Atlanta in February. Atlanta's 50 games out of the playoffs. Like, this game means nothing. There's no fans down there, and Cookie goes out first shift and just buries someone and starts running his toothless smile mouth coming back to the bench. It's like sometimes like, oh shit, here we go. We got it. Let's get ready, boys. Let's get ready. You know what I mean? Like, but think of like how coaches like that, because anybody that was a passenger, you can't be now because you're going to get eaten up. So guys like that throw the gasoline on it, bang, here we go. But I don't know, man.
There's a few things there, Rep. That's some really interesting stuff. There's a couple of things in there. One, Ryan Reeves, before he went to Vegas and eventually ended up with the Rangers, before he went to Vegas, he was sort of shopping himself around. And when he was talking to the New York Rangers, his great line was, "You have a Tom Wilson problem, and I'm the solution to your Tom Wilson problem." So I know exactly what you're talking about. And to the part about you don't do it all the time. You want to create the mystique. I love Dave Semenko. I love Dave Semenko for a lot of reasons. I thought Dave Semenko was, at his time, the king of the jungle, both in the WHA and the NHL. And he was smart and he was witty. A couple of stories here. Marty McSorley told me this story. I think I shared this in Ice Guardians, the documentary. He told me, like, Marty gets in there to Edmonton from Pittsburgh, and Marty's just like, young guy, wants to go like every game, like, come on, let's go. We're done. And Dave was always like, we're not doing it tonight. We're not doing it tonight, Marty. We're not doing it tonight. And Marty's just like, every game is just like, oh, come on, come on. No, we're not going to do it tonight. One day, he comes into the dressing room and he sees Dave in the corner. He's taping up his wrists and he says, "Marty, every now and then we must remind them. And tonight we will remind them." He goes back to taping his wrist. Like, that was Dave. He was like that understated, very cool, very cerebral.
I would be scared shitless even if I was on his team. What was
okay?
Let me ask you this. This is one of my favorite Dave Semenko stories of all time. I loved this. So Dave didn't like guys that just like saddle up next, like, come on, we're gonna go, we're gonna fuck you up. Like, he hated that, right? Dave liked what he would refer to as, I wish Dave was it's such a wonderful man he was. What he referred to as witty goon talk. Okay. So when he wanted, one of his great lines was always, okay, like, Rupper, okay, let's say you're at the draw. And Dave Semenko pulls up to you and pulls out this line, because this was one of Semenko's go-to lines. And you hear it, you're like, it's like haunting. He'd pull up to the guy, and instead of like, oh, come on, this puck drops, I'm putting this stick down your throat, he'd pull up to him and say, "Mike Rupp, why don't you and I go on a little canoe ride?" What the fuck is this?
Dude, that just makes, like,
why don't you and I go on a little canoe ride?
He's got like real Grim Reaper vibes there.
It does. Did you see? You guys have seen that clip? I think it was George LaRock, where someone lined up with George and is like,
Rachel Stefanins in Phoenix. Yeah.
And George just lines up, and the thing you gotta understand, like when you're lined up, like you're literally almost your helmets are touching on the draw, so you're literally. I'm speaking these words into his face, like it's right here, right? Like the guy that potentially could collapse your face. No. You're this close to him, and you're gonna fight. And so he's lining up, and then was it Ivanins?
Yeah, Rachel Stefanins.
Ivanins, that's how you pronounce it. He was a big boy. I fought him. He threw me around a little bit. And so he was fighting LaRock, and he's trying to get George to go to give him a shot. And LaRock's mic'd up, and he just kind of like nods, accepts the invitation, and right before the puck drops, he goes, "Good luck."
Yep.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
And just backs away all casually. It's like, oh my gosh!
What have I done now? Yeah, those guys are always the scariest. Like not the ones.
They're not the yappers. The yappers were like, you hear, I'm gonna spear your eye out. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do. Oh, okay. The guys who didn't say anything scared the hell. Like Jim McKenzie, I play with him. Jimmy Mack.
Oh my God, he was
Jimmy Mack.
We never talk. Hang on, we never talk about how tough that guy was. Never ever talk about how tough Jim McKenzie was.
All of them. Tell us about Jimmy Mack.
Yeah, well, there's other stories about Jimmy Mack too. And I can confirm, but his head is all four of our heads combined. Like the biggest head. He's just like a big man, tough as nails, but he's like a gentleman about it. Like he would just line up and he just tap. He wouldn't even slash them. He just tap the pad and they just look and he go, not say. It's like
I like that.
Oh, gotta tie my shoes. Oh, hang on a second here.
I know.
There was those guys those guys are frightening. That was I've always wondered, like for someone who plied his trade as a fighter in the NHL, and I've only been able to find one. Anyone ever have a perfect season for a fighter? Like what would you consider a perfect season for a fighter? Because Darcy Hordichuk, there was 1 year with Nashville. Okay. So Darcy Hordichuk, what year was it? 06 maybe? Darcy Hordichuk with Nashville had 60 penalty minutes, 12 fights. Perfect season. Didn't take a single minor. Every single penalty minute was a fight. Like that's it. He didn't put his team down.
You got to mouth off once in a while just to get a 10. Like, come on.
Nothing. 12 fights, 60 PEMs. Look it up. Darcy Hordichuk. I think it was 06, 07, maybe 05. I can't remember. Okay. Darcy Hordichuk. The only perfect season I ever saw for a fighter.
That's impressive. And I'll say this last Jimmy Mack one, and then I told you we're gonna take 20 minutes. You've been incredible. So thanks.
This is fun, man.
We can wrap it, Nick. You take after this, but it's Jimmy McKenzie's story. I know you guys have heard it. This is for the people listening. And if you could chime in, Jeff, because you're like an encyclopedia with history of this game. What was the referee that gave him that 10? Remember when he needed it for the bonus? You heard that before? So Jimmy,
that's happened. If Mayday tried to get, who was the referee? He tried, and the referee just kept saying, "I'm not gonna. I know you got the bonus for 300 PIMs, Mayday. You're not gonna get it. You're not gonna." It was a game against Hartford. Yeah, it was a game against Hartford. So he had to just grab someone, started filling him up, and it was like, I gotta do it.
So Jimmy McKenzie tells this story. Actually, Jimmy Mack would be a good one for us to get on here. I wonder if you would tell some stories. Jimmy Mack told this story where he needed, I don't know, say it was 4 minutes or 5 minutes or 6, whatever the number was, and he got a bonus. And for a guy, guys, the fighters, they weren't making a ton of money. This bonus is probably pretty good for what he's bringing home.
Oh yeah.
And so I guess it was like this last shift of the season and last game, and he skates up to, I can't remember which referee it was, and he goes, "Hey, what was it going to take to give me a 10?" And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, I need 10
bonus, yeah.
And he goes, I don't know, I'm just say something obscene to me. He goes, "Go fuck yourself." Like it was like a very like, as a matter of fact, he goes, go fuck yourself. And he's like, good. Threw him out. Got the bonus. Got the bonus.
It's funny too, because end of the season, like this does wink at something that used to be a thing in the NHL. Like towards the end of the season, like the last 15 games, specifically for teams that were like out of the playoffs, sometimes coaches would be instructed to bench certain players because, oh, this guy's getting too close to 20 goals. We're not going to the playoffs. And the owner doesn't want to spend the extra 30,000 for the bonus or whatever. So it's not going to happen. But teams would like everybody would have like, okay, you would know like this guy's 2 away from a $10,000 bonus, or this guy's, to your point, like 10 minutes away from 300 penalty minutes, and he gets this bonus attached to it. Like this used to be a thing towards, certainly in the 70s and 80s, towards the end of the season. Like those last 15 games and 10 games specifically were guys just picking up their bonuses, and a lot of it was for PIM. So it's like, hey, what do you need to get your bonus? Oh, I'm like 35 away. Okay, well, let's get 5 of them done right now. Like, and guys would just go for it as they would try to help each other. It's a beautiful sport. Help each other get their bonuses by just slamming fists into each other.
It's a solid piece of business.
Thanks, buddy. I'm on my way to an extra 40 grand. Let's put a new deck in the cottage. Thanks.
Mr. Marek, it's been absolutely incredible. We appreciate you taking the time. I have one more thing before you go. And you've given us a couple examples already, but it's something I like to ask from time to time, and I feel like it's appropriate to ask you because you're obviously a very deep thinker about this game.
I have
what is something, if you were, let's call it you were commissioner for a day, you were in Gary Bettman's shoes, and you had the overall authority to make a change, what is something you would change or implement or take away, add or subtract to this beautiful game we love to watch?
People have heard me talk about the color of the ice before, so I'm not going to bore anybody, but I will stick with the ice. I would like to see teams be able to change the configurations of their rinks so there was real home ice advantage. Once upon a time, the Buffalo
like the
Sabres,
old Peterborough square corners.
Oh, with the corners, I know, but like this, like you dump the puck in the corner, it shoots out in front. Actually, there's a great so the old Buffalo Memorial Auditorium, the great God, I watched so many games there. So there was a guy, he was a trainer for the Buffalo Sabres. His name was Porky Palmer. So what Porky's job was, and it was a set play the Sabres would run. It would be Pat LaFontaine and Alex McGillney. Mayday would have been the other winger. So Porky Palmer would send the Zamboni entrance was in the corner. So the set play and the Zamboni doors would have, if you would nudge it, the Zamboni door would sort of jet out a little bit. So McGillney and LaFontaine had a set play where one of them would rim the puck around, and Porky would see this, and he would body check the Zamboni gate, and it would nudge it out just a little bit. But by then, the goaltender is gone behind the net, and the puck, much like in Peterborough Rupper, the puck would squirt out in front for a tap in. So Porky Palmer, although not listed in any NHL like record book or anything, the various members of the Buffalo Sabres have told me probably had like about 8 or 9 assists in his career as a Buffalo Sabres trainer, just by body checking the Zamboni door on Porky Palmer, ladies and gentlemen. I will leave you with that story and the legend of Porky Palmer in Buffalo. But if I could do anything, I'd like to see teams like maybe, and because it would wink, like if you want to make your rink a little bit smaller, or if you want to make your rink a little bit bigger, like adds more personality to it, right? Like it would change how you make trades, it would change how you draft, it would change how you develop, like all these different things. Like outside of last change, is there really any home ice advantage? Like all the rinks they're all the same. You might
especially now that we've changed the face-off rules. We changed some of the face-off rules with D-zone coverage, D-zone face-offs, and because you know what I mean. Like it used to always be home team last to put their stick in the draw, or it's different now. Like there's some things that make it a little more better for the offensive team.
There's a whole separate pod we can do here with various goofy rule. Again, if I was commissioner, like goofy rule changes, face-offs, for example. For anyone that says, "Oh, I'm old school," well, face-offs, in hockey used to start with the puck on the ice. Now, how would you feel about starting a face-off with the puck already on the ice? The linesman's not even there, so the 6 have to line up perfectly because there's no linesman there pushing them away. The puck is sitting there. The referee blows the whistle, and then you go in and attack the puck. But the puck starts on the ice. It gets the linesman out of there, and you get a clean draw every single time. That's just one thing. The other one, why do we put face-offs in the corner?
If we're so freaky here, but we got to get goals, why don't you put the puck in scoring positions? Why don't we just have 3
face-off dots right in the middle of the zone?
I like this one. I like this one.
Right in front of each net, and then it's center ice. We keep talking about increasing goal scoring. We put face-offs in the corner. We're starting the play in the corner. Like, folks,
we'll have Mike Smith taking the draw in the center of the
ice. Things like that. I've always wondered about, if you're on a power play and you have a minute and a half left and time winds down, you start the next power play at center.
Yeah.
Why don't you start the power play in the offensive zone? Why are you penalized by having to start this thing in the neutral zone as well? Like, there's, again, like, if you gave me that magic wand, Nick, for like one day, yeah, I'd probably change a lot of things, but a lot of them would be rules. But the way I want different rinks, man. Like, I want like a small odd, the Boston Garden and things like that. I want things a little bit different. I don't want the cookie cutter. I don't want the cookie cutter. Yeah.
I could get behind every one of those suggestions, and I knew you'd give us great ones because you are a beauty, Mr. Marek. We appreciate you greatly. Thank you for taking the time to join us, sir. My pleasure. Buzz back anytime anyone cancels on you, need a backup. I'm your guy. As long as I'm number 2, a strong number 2 on the show. Hey, you said it. We will take you up on that. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff Marek. Be good.